Hello, my name is Manny Krasner. I have been practicing law here in Farmington, New Hampshire for longer than I like to think about, actually, because it makes me feel old. Uh, Going on over 30 years and heading in the general direction of 40. And in addition to being the country lawyer here in town, I have been very heavily involved, at least I think I've been very heavily involved, and I think for good purpose, in the community. And that's something that sort of comes natural to me. My parents, I grew up in Manchester, New Hampshire, and my parents were very active. My mother was very active in the League of Women Voters, and she and my father were part of a citizens committee on education, and they were both very active politically, initially as Republicans, and then eventually switching over to being Democrats. And I remember specifically, my father was chosen to be part of a focus group for post-presidential debates by ABC News, but then they kicked him out and said, "We're sorry, Dr. Krasner, you're too knowledgeable and too intelligent to be a typical New Hampshire person." He was somewhat offended, and so were most of the people we told the story to. But coming here to Farmington, I had definitely had the intention of, in addition to practicing law, also being involved in the community. And although that's my good intention, the real sort of motive force that actually made me get out and do it comes from my wife, Pat Frizella. I tend to be a little bit on the lazy side, and Pat is very passionate and very intense and determined about what she does. So sometimes I say that she's the one with the ideas and the drive, and I'm just the mouthpiece. But we've done a lot of things together. She usually lets me be in the spotlight to the extent that we are in any kind of big spotlight. I mean, that's one of the things I think you have to understand when you're trying to do things in the community, is that it's not about you. It's about what you're trying to do and get accomplished. And I think we've done a fair amount of that over the years. I started out being on the planning board, and I remember my introduction to the planning board was when I got a letter from Jane Cooper Fall, who at that time was the secretary, explaining to me that since I wasn't showing up for meetings, they were going to have to kick me off the board. And I wrote back and said nobody had ever told me I was appointed to the board. But I did get on the board and spent a good 10 years there. And I thought we did a lot of good work. It was people who were volunteering their time, people getting a lot of grief from their friends and neighbors on occasion, because a lot of people didn't like the idea of there being rules and regulations. But I think we had a really good positive effect. I remember talking with a lawyer from Dover who said, "Oh, you don't need rules up there in Farmington." And I said, "You should come up and I can show you a couple developments here that turned into instant rural slum." So I think we really had a good effect on the town. And I think we can say it's a better place now to live for most people than it was before we did our work. I had 2 stints as moderator here in Farmington, and I enjoyed that immensely. It's just being part of direct democracy is just a great thing. And I know a lot of people didn't like the way I was moderator, and a lot of other people did, but that's okay, because that's also part of direct democracy. Everybody's got their opinion. I definitely want to stay involved in the community. I am now actually the trustee of one of the 3 trustees of the trust funds for Farmington. Day before the last town meeting, I was thinking of calling people and asking them to write me in, and I forgot to do so, but Pat and I both voted for me. And then I got a call from Kathy Sieber, our town clerk, saying, "You got the most votes." And I still haven't asked her how many I got, whether 2 was enough. But I definitely look forward to serving as trustee of the trust funds. And then as time goes on, I think I will definitely stay involved. And I'm still enjoying practicing law. But as time goes on, I expect I will be winding down my law practice. And as that happens, I definitely intend to get more involved in both town politics and maybe even be foolish enough to run for state legislature. Who knows? So yeah, I definitely plan to stay involved. I can't imagine not being involved. One of the interesting lessons for me was, I'll be honest, waltzed in here with my Harvard degree and feeling kind of full of myself that I would help lead Farmington forward, and discovered that people have their own ideas, and just because you can wave a fancy college degree at them does not mean they're going to just accept what you say at face value. So that's also been a good personal lesson for me in what the real world is like, and that's been good also. I think I've sort of reached an equilibrium with all of that, and that's been good. Whether you want to do community service on the planning board level, going to town meeting level, whether you want to oppose a war, or whether you want to be in electoral politics, patience and endurance are really important. Sometimes I say that if all of the good people here in Farmington had just stayed instead of moving on and getting discouraged, or getting discouraged and moving on, we'd be in great shape now. I don't know if that's necessarily true. People have their lives and they go where they're going to go. But the big thing is you have to understand that just because you have what you think is a great idea doesn't mean other people are immediately going to accept it and say, oh yeah, that's wonderful. As Pat is fond of saying, nobody owes you anything, and nobody owes you the obligation to believe whatever you're saying. So you got to be persistent, and you got to hang in for the long haul, and you get very discouraged. But if you stick with it, usually you can feel like you've accomplished something. I mean, I can honestly say that Farmington, New Hampshire is a better place to live than when I first came here and when Pat first came here. I think a little bit of the credit for that is due to the efforts we've made and the efforts of other people on the, planning board people like Butch Barron, Jane Fall, the late Ronnie Parrick, did a lot of work and accomplished something. And I'm pleased to have been able to say at least that. Yeah, I think it's good to do this, and not everybody gets involved in the same way. We're all different people. I remember arguing with my mother about that because she thought the only way to be involved was politically, even though she was involved in more than that herself. But I think any way you can get involved with other people and in your community, whether you put up a sculpture in one of the adopted spots because you're an artist, or whether you work on one of the committees, or help rake the lawn at the park, whatever. I think getting involved is good, and the interesting thing is if you do that, you meet other people who want to get involved, and usually you make good friends. So it's good for you in a lot of ways.
I'm Steve Baker, founder of Three Ponds Protective Association, which began actually as a presentation by Dr. Haney from UNH. He lives right here in Milton. He's been in charge of what's called the Lay Lakes Monitoring Program for over 25 years, and the Three Ponds has been part of that since 1991. And I went to a presentation that Dr. Haney was giving in Milton in the fall of 2004. And he suggested that Three Ponds needed an association. And it was then that prompted me to write a letter to 550 property owners from Milton and Lebanon, Maine. Milton, New Hampshire, Lebanon, Maine, because our waters are split between those two towns and those two states that started the organization, founded officially in 2005. To my right is the current president, Bob Myrick.
I'm Bob Myrick.
And to my left, is, what's your name again?
Wayne Sylvester.
Wayne Sylvester. I'm the vice president.
And that brings up an interesting part of any organization, that succession planning or getting other people involved is critical to the long-term success. So we've had, over the last 11 or 12 years, many people involved, and quite a few of them are still involved, but many have moved to another town, gotten involved in other activities and dropped out as a result. But we still have probably 150 families who are members, and probably 15 people who are actively involved in keeping the organization moving forward.
We have a fairly substantial series of programs that Steve had started at the first, and it's been basically the protective part of the association is the main function, and the goals upon which it's based, dealing primarily with water quality, invasive species as a very large segment, and the monitoring for the weed programs, as well as dealing with the issues of things like septics and participation in the keeping the waters clean.
One of the things that I think we're pretty proud of is that we have over 17 years of data from our water testing. And we do this in conjunction with the University of New Hampshire and Dr. Haney. And it is something that has allowed us to go and look at a snippet of the water quality over the last 15, 17 years. Because that is the basis, the most important part of our mission is to go and preserve and protect the water quality of Milton Three Pines. One of the major endeavors that we had about 5 years ago was we began to go and do watershed surveys of all three ponds. So that was in 2009, 10, and 11. And we had between 20 and 25 people who participated in going around the three ponds. We did Townhouse first, Depot second, and Northeast Pond third, identifying those sites that were potential non-point sources of erosion. Major concern there is phosphorus getting into the lakes, which creates algae that produces all kinds of nasty stuff. So that was one thing that involved many people, and we will continue to go and monitor that. From that, we identified 158 sites that were potential erosion sites, and we offer technical assistance to people who would like to address those problems, as well as a grant, $250 grants to people who apply. Another thing we did at the town beach was we built 3 rain gardens to slow down the amount of erosion at the town beach, as well as on either side of the pavilion what are called infiltration stairs, again to slow down the surface water as it reaches or as it heads toward the lake. And third, a stormwater catchment basin from the main side of the road.
And these programs that he's talking about were really quite successful. That and the water testing has been extremely successful programs, along with the boat inspections. However, now with this new weed that's come in, the European Naiad, we're have to ramp up now for getting volunteers and getting the people involved. This, is the town of Milton, the town of Lebanon, and we really would like to have those people get involved. And we're going to especially need in this coming spring. We're going to need lots of people to get out and in their kayaks and canoes and boats to look for this as it grows, because we have to spot the places where it's going to be coming up. And this is going to be a really important feature of our program, and it'll benefit everyone in town and the towns themselves.
I would like to go and encourage those people who are not members of Three Ponds Protective Association to become. We have a website, threeponds.org, and if they go on that website, there are newsletters there that we've put out each year. There is a application to go and join the association, and I'm not sure right now what the numbers are, but it's somewhere around 140-ish, all right, out of over 500 waterfront properties. And you know, now that we are faced with a serious problem, and a problem that potentially could last for several years, we would encourage people to get involved, either as weed watchers or just become more knowledgeable of what's going on within the organization.
And I'd like to say that the recognition that the organization is being cited for here is really appreciated, because we don't always hear the feedback from the public, but we know it's beneficial. And when you're volunteering, you're not getting paid for your time and energy, but it's critical that, you know, the more people, you know, the little pat on the back kind of thing really does help. And it's nice to know that, you know, there's actually another organization that recognized us as doing something, and we really appreciate it. I see this as a start, and if we can get more people involved, it would be beneficial to everyone on both sides of the lakes.
Good evening. My name is Dot Vizel. I'm from New Durham, and I represent the New Durham Parks and Recreation Commission in that community. Currently, I'm the vice chair of that organization. I'd like to give you a little history of our commission and our recreation department in town. Way back in the middle 70s, one evening I pulled into the New Durham General Store, and I noticed as I got out of my car a senior citizen standing there very hesitantly. She immediately approached me and asked me if she could walk into the store with me, because there was a group of very silly, almost rowdy boys hanging around the entrance. I escorted her in, helped her with her shopping, and went outside with her, and in fact asked one of the boys if he would put her groceries in the car for her, just to show her that these were really good kids. After she left, I went up and talked to them and asked if they were aware how much they were kind of scaring senior citizens in town by their behavior. And I asked why they were hanging around there. This was a business, and they said, of course, there is nothing to do in this town and nowhere to go. When I checked on that fact, I found that, in fact, that was very partially true. The recreation program at that point consisted of a part-time director who had recently been let go for inappropriate behavior. My next step was to talk to the New Durham School principal, Ken Perry, and we applied for a CETA grant, and through that grant we were able to hire a most wonderful and dynamic, charismatic personality by the name of Regina O'Brien, and she became the first real rec director in our town. We had her for 2 years under CETA status, but when her funding ran out, and we were faced with losing her, a group of citizens organized ourselves into a little group called New Durham Parents for Recreation, and we conducted a myriad of fundraising activities to keep her on salary and to keep our program viable until we could get it on the town warrant. The following March, the residents of New Durham passed a provision which established the first Parks and Recreation Commission. It was a 5-member commission and gave us a very small budget. That was in 1979. That was the beginning of our program. I'm sharing that little bit of history with you this evening just to highlight the impact that any one person can make on the fabric of a community. It's often just one person standing up and identifying a need and working with others to generate viable solutions that provide the dynamic impact that's needed to make change. Parks and Recreation has, in the last 35 years, grown from a pay-as-you-go to a cornerstone in our community. A wonderful succession of rec directors have followed in Regina O'Brien's footsteps, from Russ Perrin, Rick Anthony, the very wonderful Kelly Chase, who I know is here this evening, and our current very talented, very energetic director, Nicole Hunter. Nicole is working hard to expand the scope and outreach of our program.
Currently, Parks and Recreation deals with organizing, programming, and sports activities for youth, as well as for adults and for seniors. We provide a wide array of activities and events throughout the year to give people in town an opportunity to come together, to work together, to find new interests, to learn new passions and to grow new passions. Some of the things that we do now, we provide for sports activities, baseball, softball, soccer, and basketball primarily. We also provide pre-K activities for the youngest in our town. I think the greatest needs that we have from the community are people to stand up and let us know what they would like to see for programming, for fundraising, what's important to them, what makes them happy, what makes them want to strive to do more. You know, we always need volunteers to run our programming or people to donate supplies, but the direction that Parks and Recreation is going to go in is going to be based on those people who come to us and let us know, this is my idea, this is what I'd like to try, this is what I'd like to see. We are very open to trying new programming and to see what other people it touches in town, but we can only do that if people come up and let us know. I would like to add, I'm very fortunate that I am the director at the Parks and Recreation Commission, so this is my job, and it's wonderful. But I volunteer in other ways, and I would say people should get out there and make connections, because the kids that you help in sports, the connections that you make at a fundraiser or a community event, those are what hold the community together. They teach the kids the values that they need going forward to be successful in their education, to be successful in the workplace, to be positive contributors to their community when they get older. Just making those connections, feeling like you're a part of something bigger than yourself, it's so rewarding. It can get you through the roughest of days. Seeing a child grow and learn is an amazing opportunity. Making a new friend you would never have known had you not stepped out of your comfort zone and attended an event or volunteered your time is something you just can't get otherwise. I would encourage everybody to look in their communities to see what they can do. I'm sure that there is a recreation department or a library or a welfare office or a food pantry, somewhere you can go to make a difference, whether it's volunteering your time, volunteering your knowledge, or just giving a little bit back on a one-time event. I'm sure you'll leave being a little happier. I can't imagine you'd regret it.
Finally, I'd like to thank the wonderful Tri-Town Democrats for this amazing honor and opportunity to share the background, the history, and our pride in our program and in our rec director. I think this is a wonderful initiative that you've started. It gives our communities the opportunity to kind of present their best foot forward, and it fosters pride in who we are as a community. So thank you to the committee for nominating us, and thank you for your wonderful dinner.
I'd like to add a huge thank you to everybody who has come out tonight to support the honorees this evening. You are the people who are committed to these initiatives, to these organizations. You're the ones that push these things forward, and we couldn't do any of the work that we're able to do without you. So thank you for taking your time to give, to share your knowledge, and to volunteer whatever it is that you have inside you. We couldn't do it without you.